Welcome back. Well, a big day in Canberra today with the passage of the controversial carbon tax bill. That's one down for the Gillard government, but a long way to go. Meanwhile, the world financial situation is still precarious, but we're hanging in there. Joining me now to discuss the political and economic situations, Shadow Finance Minister Andrew Robb at Parliament House. Hello, nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Janine.
So what's the feeling there today? We saw a lot of backslapping on the other side of the benches and a blood vow from Tony Abbott to fight this. What would you say the mood is today?
Well, it reminded me actually of the scene after we got work choices through, and there was a lot of backslapping and shaking of hands and all the rest, and it was the start of a nightmare, really.
Be careful what you wish for or you get. Is that the warning?
Well, what I'm saying is, you know, I think it really did demonstrate that was sealed with a kiss today. They're all kissing and slapping one another on the back, but for a lot of people out there, it will confirm what they sense, and that is that the government's got absolutely no empathy for the situation that's facing literally hundreds of thousands of small businesses, and certainly all those areas that are, you know, part of the two-track economy. So people will be bemused and concerned, I think, about the reaction in the chamber today when they see it on the TVs tonight.
But just from a political strategy point of view, the scare campaign, if you want to call it that, the political strategy that your side's invoked has had the impact. Now that it's been passed, it's a fait accompli, unless there's an election before in July. Are you going to be able to keep up that momentum against it, do you think?
Oh, I've got no doubt, because it will become increasingly apparent as it's introduced, the sheer volume of involvement by bureaucrats, the bureaucratic nature of it, then the impact on physical impact on electricity prices. Once that is seen in the electorate, all of the things that we've been saying and business has been saying will be confirmed. And I think they've got a tiger by the tail now. And the fact, if the rest of the world was doing it, we probably wouldn't be having this debate. But the fact that the rest of the world is not doing it, and they keep trying to sort of colour this issue. But I can remember for 2 years, and I had climate change for the last year before it was we beat it last time, and for the 2 years we were lectured about how this could never be achieved, how it could never be successful unless there was a global scheme. And here we are, literally 18 months later, going it alone, going in a unilateral way ahead of the rest of the world, when the tax will largely hit the things that we've been, you know, historically very good at. We are literally penalising the best things that we're at.
While we're talking about the rest of the world, let's get to your shadow ministry. And we've talked many times over the years about the global financial crisis. What's your feeling at the moment on how the world situation's looking? And I recognise it changes day to day, from Slovakia to Greece or whatever. But just generally, how do you feel things are looking out there as opposed to here for the moment?
Right. Well, every time I talk about this, Wayne Swan says that I'm talking down the economy. I do feel that the increased savings, the dramatic increase in savings over the last 12 months in Australia amongst households, not the government, but amongst households, is because they have got a sixth sense about what lies out there, the problems. And my sense is that the world has grossly lived beyond its means. And it's no different to a family living beyond its means, to a company that's got debt up to its ears. Ultimately, there will be an adjustment. It has not occurred, and it is, I think, starting to occur. Europe, as Bob Zalek said recently, as head of the World Bank, we are now entering, as a world, we're entering a very dangerous period. And I do think that, you know, the priority here should be to try and weatherproof our economy as best we can against those things that we have no control in Europe and in the United States.
How would you, that's an interesting word, weatherproofing. What exactly are you talking about?
Well, why did we get through the first global financial crisis.
China?
I mean, I hear it was because we invested in pink bats, but I don't find that totally convincing. The reason we got through was because, one, we had China who helped pull us through, but also we had no debt and we had a huge surplus. And it's just like if a family goes into a difficult period, and that's why they're all trying to pay down their mortgage now. If things get rough for a family and they've got no mortgage requirements and they've got some money in the bank, well, even if the breadwinner loses his or her job, they've got some breathing space. They've got 3 months to cover bills. Now, that's true for Australia.
I understand your point. We do have more debt. But you have to admit, given that you said how dangerous the rest of the world is, we look a damn sight better than everybody in Europe, America and everywhere else, don't we?
Well, on a debt basis, we do. But bear in mind, we always have had, historically, much lower levels of external government debt, at least, than other countries, because, you know, the United States, they've got such a huge domestic market that when things get rough, they've still got that domestic market to carry them through. When things get rough for Australia, if the rest of the world does go into a big dip, the first thing that'll come off is commodity prices, and the thing that's holding up our budget is the Pollyanna prospect of maintaining the current levels of commodity prices. So we always have had less debt because we are such a small open economy dependent on good export prices, and there's nothing smart about that. And the fact that we're in a better position, that doesn't mean we need to get to the worst position. We need to be comparable to them. We are in a better position, but we are far less resilient, I would say, today than we were 4 years ago. We've got a debt which is growing at the third highest rate of growth of any country in the world, behind Iceland and Ireland. So we are living beyond our means. Households know that we shouldn't be, but we are as a country.
What about, say, on interest rates? I mean, a lot of that confidence, you talked about small business. Even the prospect of a cut in interest rates, nothing to do with the government here or our economic situation, really greatly a factor of that concern about overseas. But it seems that even the prospect of not having another rise is enough to help those small businesses. Would you agree interest rates is a key factor in confidence?
It's a major factor because it's an indicator of our relative position, and I would dispute the fact that interest rates are are totally a function of what's going on elsewhere. Access Economics says that for every 13 or 14 billion deficit, we are, as a country, or the government is adding, because of its activity in the markets, the finance markets, the credit markets, it's adding close to 1% to interest rates. So if the government was actually living within its means, and bear in mind this year again, the government will spend $22 billion more than it raises in the middle of a mining boom, which is hard to believe. But in this situation, if the government actually balanced its books, then interest rate pressure would come off, and the exchange rate pressure would come off. It wouldn't solve the problem, but it would help.
Ease it. Just on
it would
that,
ease it. It would help weatherproof. It would increase confidence, and it would see some money starting to be invested.
I just want to ask you before we run out of time. I mean, you've stressed the need to keep the debt down. The government is committed to returning to surplus, but people on your side of the chamber have been sceptical about it. I mean, you know, that they are committed to the point of obsession. Many economists say they shouldn't be this obsessed. But if you think debt is the problem, wouldn't you commend their obsession to returning to surplus in 2012-13?
Well, it's a noble objective, but I mean, it's been their political ploy for the last 2 or 3 years, when they've actually presided over by a country mile, the two largest deficits in our history. And again this year, 22 billion, which I think will be the third largest in our history. And they keep talking about this surplus, which I still think is a myth. If you look at the assumptions that sit behind a surplus in a couple of years' time, they're Pollyanna assumptions. And you know, this government, even if it ever gets to a surplus, still has all that debt. We're sitting at $210 billion gross debt. So we're sitting with this mountain of debt that we've never had, and if you get to a surplus, you haven't paid 1 cent of the debt off. So there's a huge task.
One quick question before we run out of time, and
Yep.
I know I'm probably going to have to cut you off. Speaking of deficits and money, you keep being accused of having a 70 billion hole in your own budgets if you were to get in. Have you solved that problem?
This is a nonsense. I mean, it's a fabrication. I mean, we will present budgets which enable this country and the government to live within its means. And now that means we will have to look, fairly harshly at a lot of programs. But and we're also getting rid of taxes which are discouraging, like the one passed today, which will hang like a dead weight over confidence and the prospects of business for years to come. This is a really sad day, I think, because of what's happened, and this government will come to deeply regret the folly of this tax, and the way in which they've celebrated it just beggars belief.
Thank you very much for that. On that note, I'm going to leave it there. As I said, nice to talk to you again, Andrew Robb,
Yeah.
Shadow
Thanks,
Finance Minister in Canberra on a historic day. I'll be back tomorrow night. Hope to see you then.